Sharing our stories makes us stronger and brings us closer together. So, here's to the strong women. May we know them, the podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Lucas. I'm a coach, a published author, and a speaker, but more so I like to create spaces for the messy parts of our stories to be celebrated and supported, because we are stronger together.
In this episode, Bebuo helps us see how the endless pursuit of gold stars and accolades stifles our inner voice and gives us a 3-step process to developing our inner authority.
Welcome to May We Know Them podcast. I am your host, Meghan Lucas. Thanks for being here. Today's episode I am so excited about because I am interviewing my coach, which is such a treat just for me, but for you all. Like, you have no idea. Sit down, buckle up, have paper with you, because Bebuo, who I'm going to introduce you to in a second, is for sure going to drop some knowledge on you that you're going to want to write down and come back to later. So have some paper nearby. Anything that's said today that jumps out at you, take notes. It might not really resonate for you today. It might hit you 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now. But trust, if there's some inkling that says, ooh, I hear that, write it down. Even if it rubs you the wrong way and challenges you. That's what we're all about here, is having new thoughts, new things come into mind, expanding our point of view, all of those things. So thanks for being here today. Like I mentioned, Bebuo is my coach. Bebuo, we're coming up on 5 years together.
We are.
I know, which makes me feel both old and like, wow, like ground taken in 5 years of things. Oh my man. She has been in my corner through so many things, such a roller coaster of life, which roller coasters are both fun and terrifying. So thanks for holding me through all of it, screaming with me, whatever I need. We have Bebuo to thank for this podcast existing. I remember having this idea and mentioning it to her and immediately dismissing it as frivolous. And why would I do that when there are more, I'm using air quotes here, important things that I should be focusing on? And she challenged me to see the value in like why doing this would actually benefit those important things, at the very least for the reason of I would enjoy it and have fun. And that being like, who needs more of a reason than that? So yeah, thank you for that. For me, this has been such a self-care, cup filling activity, let alone the wisdom and knowledge and safe space that it becomes for listeners. So thank you so much for the push. You're good at those pushes all the time. Bebuo brings a wealth of knowledge into the space here, both from just like professionally and like personal experience. And we're going to dive into all of it today. And the topic that we're going to be discussing today is about being an internal authority. And what we mean by that, I'm going to have Bebuo kind of parcel it out with us too, is if you're somebody who second guesses yourself a lot or not suffers from, but deals with a lot of imposter syndrome, like, why me? Why are they picking me? Why are they promoting me? How could I be the one to do this? Like, always looking for reasons why not you. Or if you need a lot of co-signers on decisions, on things that you want to do in your life. That's kind of what we're talking about today, being your own internal authority. So Bebuo, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, you said it all perfectly. I think the thing that I would add is this is for folks whose safety is external. Like, safety exists outside of you. Safety is always something that happens to you or happens in the moment versus something you're walking around with.
Oh, that's juicy. That's juicy. Because we've talked about this. For me, like, safety has always been connected to relationships and finances. Who's in my corner and how much money do I have coming in? And so, maybe those of you listening are nodding along like, yeah, duh, that makes sense. But we're shifting this to an internal view that isn't conditional on those things, where it starts with us. So might be a big pill to swallow. You might be wondering, like, how the heck does it even work?
But it's perfect timing. It's perfect timing, especially with all the job loss happening right now, all of the unknowns. It's perfect timing.
Yeah. And I'm thinking too of, we're not that far moved from a pandemic where a lot of, just shifting in general, but identity shifts. Maybe things that we attach to what we were doing in the world that developed that sense of safety that we've had to reinvent, or maybe are still in the process of reinventing or grieving or wishing we could go back to that. So from that lens, Bebo, share with us, like, we're going to talk about this, but share with us, through your lens, like what you've seen with this, how you've fostered this within yourself. Maybe a little bit of the path you've taken to get here. You feel free to start wherever you want to start with this. I'm sure I could go back, years ago, what have you. So I'll pass the mic to you here.
Sure, thank you. If I look at most pertinent information to share, I'd say that growing up, every kid has a specific experience. Some kids have parents that like pour all this love and safety into them. And so when they hit the world, they're like, oh yeah, I'm confident.
They're built up.
Exactly. And they build on that experience. I grew up with a dad who was more so like, if you don't, it's all about the education. It's all about what you produce. It's all about what you're doing. It's all about your accolades and growing and stability, external stability, and creating all these things. So it's not that he was saying something is off inside. His major lens was all about what you're creating externally.
Externally, yeah. Gold stars, A pluses, degrees on the wall. Yeah. Yeah.
And so growing up in a household that way, you kind of grow up a little bit turbulent internally because it's like, oh, I got an A-, not good enough. I got into 7 colleges. But you didn't apply for Harvard. You didn't go to Harvard. You're not like me. So it was kind of like the air out the bubble all the time. And the life experience itself was always something that was liquid. It was always something that was ever changing, ever flowing. It was never constant.
Yeah.
And naturally, when you have when your authority within is not constant, your safety isn't constant and present, you're looking for it outside.
Yeah.
You're looking for people to create it for you. So you end up in a relationship with your new dad or your new mom, or you try to find it in a career and you stay too long in that career because that career gives you safety, although it doesn't give you happiness.
Yeah. Oh, I hear a recipe for burnout in here somewhere. Yep.
From the passion, from the purpose. So I had all those experiences. And so as I grew up, I just grew into looking for more and more of those external safeties. And my authority always was with my dad, or my lens of my dad within my ear. That's, oh, that's good. Oh, that's bad. It was never my actual own voice. And I could tell because it was kind of like extremely judgmental and it wasn't nice.
Yeah.
It was just being parented from within.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so much sinking into my bones that just resonates right now. I'm sending hand squeezes to listeners who just got that for themselves too. Like, okay, I feel seen. I feel seen. Thanks, Bebo. This is what Bebo does, by the way. So this is a normal experience.
All that to say, if we fast forward a little bit, in high school, naturally, because I already had my internal parent, I went into becoming a social worker. The state was doing a social work program. I joined in on that and I started as a peer counselor. So I was counseling my peers in crisis while social workers supported it. Because at the time, this intervention was, I don't know if I guess they were in process building evidence on the program, but it was a structure that was like, hey, if you won't have conversations with adults, I'm going to put you in a room with a peer and have a peer support you and have a peer guide you, because maybe that relationship will be a little bit stronger and a little bit more supportive. And so we started to create that container. And I did that for maybe 2 or 3 years before the program shut down.
Okay. That's interesting. What I'm hearing in that is I mean, a couple things, like for me, social workers save the world. They're saving the world. So if you've got a not enough story running in your background, you're going to look for the opportunity to save the world. So, and what comes with that, right? Like there's a lot that comes with that. I also hear maybe a projection of like that safety coming from you being that person for someone else, like in a peer setting.
Yep.
So actually creating it externally for someone else still versus within you.
It was a perfect contraption, right? Because I got to walk around with a badge on my chest like, Bebuo saves the world. And simultaneously avoids all those situations because as she lives vicariously saving all of you, she is completely avoiding living her own life because she's too busy saving yours.
Yeah.
It's such a delicious trap that you don't actually know it's happening. It's kind of like one of those automatic moves that you don't know is happening until someone wakes you up.
Yeah, because I can imagine if, especially if you have success in that area, for anyone listening, if you have success in any area where you are saving the day, taking care of someone else, being the go-to person, everyone can count on you, that, we're in a way rewarded for that.
Oh, yeah.
For me, in my experience, I was rewarded for that until it became expected. And that's where resentment came in. But again, it's all tied to I wasn't listening to my voice and what I want. I wasn't even connected to it. I didn't know it. And I had a wake up. So talk to us about your wake up, like where you first heard yourself or got curious enough to listen.
Yeah. So later on in life, I went back into social work, got my degree in social work, all that good stuff, my master's, all that good stuff. And Nita, I mentioned my dad was a psychiatrist. So my dad was doing the work of, coming home after like dealing with critically challenged people and imparting all his fear onto us in the household. And so that was another extreme that pushed me into a certain path. But went to social work. And there came a point when we started introducing coaching concepts in the social work sphere. And I started to get really, I enjoyed all of the work that coaches did to wake people up and challenge people to be awake. And so that's when I started to be like, oh, well, I want to do this. Then I got into the training program and they were like, hey, you're not going to do that. We're going to do it to you. And I was like, well, I'm fine. I'm fine. I've been fine. I've always been fine. My go-to phrase, like this was all I had the language for, was I'm fine.
Yeah.
Other people didn't have to be fine, but I did. And it took me it had to have been at least 10 to 16 months, even after I graduated from the program, for me to be like, okay, I'm not fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fine is such a stiff arm. I'm
Mhm.
fine. Conversation over. Don't look over here. Let's look at you, though. I'm interested in you. And yeah, for anyone who's done any sort of coaching work or who's even curious about it, and really, let's widen the lens there. Any sort of personal development, any sort of growth, it starts with you. And so, yeah, maybe, going into a program like that for another badge, accolade, something you can hang on your wall that says, I can help you because I have this training. And then to get the rude awakening, which often is what those awakenings are. They're so rude that you actually have a lot of work to do. And sign up for this.
And you resist it, right? Like you all are probably listening to this, resisting this right now. And I totally get it. It's fine. Because that's what I come in and do for people now. I come in, be with them and they're resistant, and you work with them to break up with their story because it's a story that you argue for. Because right now in this very moment, it is your truth. Right now in this very moment, all the accolades, all of it, this was what life was about.
Yeah, and we're trained in that. Like I think about coming back to imposter syndrome, right? Like personally, I know I am committed, not as much anymore with Bebuo's help, but I can be very committed to defending the reasons why I am an imposter, not enough, why things are going to fail, based on a collection of evidence that, I carry around or have carried around, or maybe now sits far in a back corner that I find myself diving into sometimes, not as much anymore. But coming back to safety, actually, a lot of us were trained in that way or molded in that way as a way to stay safe, as a way to avoid failure, as a way to not piss someone off, as a way to do things right. More air quotes over here. So you collect evidence as to what not to do, or, you find evidence of ways in which like you have done that and this is why you're going to fail. And that's that. If you've got a nasty little voice in the side of your head chirping at you saying what you think you can handle this, that's your evidence. So at some point through doing the work, you start to break up that evidence or find new evidence.
Well, I think the first step, so there are a couple steps that I'll give to you all. First step is acknowledging the voice, because we're in acknowledging the voice, we're separating it from our internal dialogue. Now we get to actually be with the, hey, you are inarticulate. Hey, you are not enough. Hey, we get to actually acknowledge the negativity in that voice.
Yeah.
That's like literal step one. Be with it and see its impact. It's heavy.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Once we do that, then what?
Then we move on to step two. After we decided, we get to say, oh, well, is this real? Is this a fact? Am I in fact that? We get to build that in. Now we're building internal dialogue. So because before we get to authority, we've got to dance with our internal dialogue. Because we always have two parts. We have this conversation that's coming from this negative space. I call it the negative protective space. And we have this other dialogue that's also happening, which is this positive, hey, I actually know who I am. And I have this other part of me that I can listen to. Based in positive evidence. It's kind of like Google. If you go on Google and you look up bad news, you'll find a ton. And if you look up good news, you'll find a ton.
Yeah, it depends on what you want to find. You can find evidence that coffee is good for your health or bad for your health. Same with red wine. It just depends on like what you want to find.
And that's the game that we're playing.
Yeah.
What do you want to find? What's the conversation that you actually want to be having? Do you want to have this empowering conversation with yourself and find the evidence? Or do you want to find the evidence that empowers you to go for your dreams, to exist in the role that you've already attained, but to exist in it in, hey, this is mine? Or are we looking for all the things empowering, looking for all the things that disempower us? So that's what's next.
I hear in this dance, this step two, a lot of curiosity.
Yes.
A lot of questioning. So, just to throw some cards for listeners to play out there, like, if you've got a belief or you're real committed to something, like ask yourself, so what? So what? Just real kind of nonchalant. Okay, so what? Take the significance and the heaviness out of it and make it like it's no big deal and just see what comes up. Okay, step two, what's next?
So then we move to step three. So the thing that will come out of step two, if you do step two, the way you can actually do step two, you'll start to notice that more things are just fear-based and unfounded. Like you don't actually have real concrete evidence to hold against yourself. And so you'll notice those pieces. And so in steps three, it's to decide what next. Okay, am I going to go this way or go that way? And you actually choose. Here's what I'm going to power. And in choosing, you're shifting a paradigm. You're choosing into a new paradigm. You're choosing into a paradigm, fancy word for mindset, a new outlook.
Yeah, and this is the unknown. This is the growth area. This is stepping outside of your comfort zone. This is where you're probably not going to know what you're doing because you're taking different steps, different actions. You're trying new things. This is where you can play a little bit, which I know play is a big part of what you bring to the table, Bebuo, when you're training leaders.
Mhm.
Actually, like, have them be more playful. So, for anybody listening to this, if you're in some sort of leadership position or you have a view on leadership, which again is authority, tying it back into our theme here, you may have a list of characteristics in your mind of like the perfect leader. They are strong, they always know the answer, they, steadfast. You might not picture them as the person giggling and like, cracking jokes or saying, I don't know, someone look it up, like just different ways. So broaden our perspective here, Bebo, around through a leadership lens, because that's what we all are in our lives. We don't need a fancy title, what it means to be in that unknown and bring that curiosity in and perhaps even be a little playful with it.
Yeah. So in that step 3, your voice is getting louder. You're actually deciding who you're going to be in the moment.
Yeah.
And from that decision, it actually gets to be whatever you say it's going to be. And, I call myself a very unserious, serious leader because I come to play, I come to laugh, I come to be your partner, and we're going to be successful and we're going to hit success.
Yeah.
However, the way that we get there is going to be unbounded by whatever belief there is of a path that we have to follow. And that's what it means with regard to leadership. This internal authority says like, hey, here's how I want to lead. After we put all this stuff down, after we put the thief of joy, which is comparison, down, who we're supposed to be, who the books say we're supposed to be, because you've already developed that foundation. If we're already trusting what you've developed already, all that is left here to be is authentic.
Yeah.
Authentically you. And that is internal authority.
Oh, there's so much trust there.
Yes. But you can build it. You don't have to start trusting at 100%.
Yeah.
All we need is a little bit.
Yeah. And that only grows if you're playing, if you're taking action, if you're messing up and picking yourself back up and saying, oh, I learned something here. Maybe that's not it. If you're trying things on, ways of being, test out a new career, a new job, a new whatever, it comes from just getting out there and doing it. I hear from anyone listening who really loves personal development, which I think is where we start when we start to get curious in that step 2. We start to we get hungry for the questions. I think it's common or easy to then adapt those books, those authors, those mentors, those thought leaders, their viewpoints, their concepts as ours. It's still an external authority, but it's maybe a little more woken up. Like it's starting to pull us towards more of finding our voice. I think there comes a point, and maybe not, maybe this has just been my experience. Like there got to a point where I couldn't do any more personal development. It became noise.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, in hindsight, looking back, like that's where like, oh, I trust my voice now. So a measure may perhaps for people listening, like, how will I know I've gotten there? That was mine. That was mine. Doesn't mean I still don't have doubts and all the things, but now I have a grounding point. Much with Bebo's support through all of that. So Bebo, with this, like, what are you seeing in the people you work with? Those that follow these steps, embrace this path, play with options, try on new things. What are you seeing in terms of their leadership, in terms of their successes? And I don't just mean in like the companies they work for, but in their lives. What are you noticing?
Well, number one, listen very closely. If you are in a marriage, you get sexier. I'm telling you, your partners will be the first ones, because all of my clients, their partners always like, well, thank you so much, Bebo. At the end of our work together, they're just so much sexier, because when you have this because internal authority begets internal peace. When you have internal peace, you're brighter, you are freer, you are lighter. Like it's all of the above. And so
it's a glow, it radiates. It literally is an internal experience. Yeah.
So I call it the sexy method because you get sexier. Outside of that, when you're good within, your ability to partner, to be in relationship shifts. And that's not just at home, but that's also at work. You find yourself delegating more because you're not holding on to all of your work because you got to be the one, because all your worth is in the work that you produce. Yes, I know some people are cringing right now because I'm talking about you, I know. But all of your worth is no longer invested in your work, and therefore you get to lead.
Yeah.
You actually get to be a leader. You get to be more invested in everyone around you versus invested in protecting yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Which might look a little similar. Like if you're somebody who is, I mean, it can look like micromanaging versus genuine curiosity and like relationship building.
Mm-hmm.
And what I hear in this too is not only do you get a chance to actually lead, but you get a chance to live when you aren't constantly worried about collecting the next accolade,
Mm-hmm.
and what that means if you don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
The sexy method. Okay. We can retitle the whole episode. Oh, goodness. Well, talk to me a little bit, Bebo. Share with us about, I know you curate some pretty cool containers to work with leaders in this self-discovery, practicing these new ways of being. So talk to us about what you have that we should know about.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So of course I do one-to-one coaching. That is my, hey, if nothing else, this is what you got. It's on your schedule, and
Mhm.
that's how we rock.
Yeah.
Outside of that, we have group coaching. Group coaching looks a couple different ways. So group coaching can be broken down into one thing that I call my retreats,
Mhm.
which is an experience called the Executive Playground. Those retreats happen sometimes quarterly to every 6 months.
Mhm.
And our next retreat coming up is South Africa. We will be in South Africa from March 1st to March 9th. And I have two options for that. If anyone's listening and you're like, oh, that's actually already on my bucket list and I'd like to go. We are still enrolling. We will be enrolling to the last minute of the last hour. If you can catch a 48-hour flight out, make it happen. We have a March 1st to March 9th offer, or you can arrive on March 4th and join us from March 4th to the 9th if you want to go, but there are time constraints,
Mhm.
etc.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's one of our big things. That's the playground. And that is basically you come travel with us around the world and you do the work in person, in group. Yes, uncomfortable, a whole bunch of people that you don't know. But oftentimes those are the containers that create and generate the biggest breakthroughs
Yeah.
because you're completely out of your element.
Mhm.
And some people actually find it freeing because you're out of your element.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a big one. I also do group coaching over Zoom. I have some masterminds coming out in the next 2 months. I also do workshops.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I know a workshop you did recently around self-sabotage and the ceilings we set for ourselves. You want to share a little bit about that at all?
Self-sabotage and ceilings was basically an experience where leaders came together to talk about all the ceilings that they personally generate. Here are all the ways that we get in our own way while we climb the ladder, while we hit the Forbes list, while we do all these amazing things in the world. Here's my vulnerable reality. Because a lot of the things we do often exist within some perfectionist jump to the top or some ideation of success that we have. But outside of that, like, oh, I'm limiting the amount that I get to play, or I'm limiting the amount that I actually get to enjoy this whole wild ride. Like it's kind of living in a huge mansion and never actually living there.
Yeah, like not allowing yourself to slide down the banister.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go dip in my salt pool.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and I hear in that the external authority, the way we should, versus the internal pull and guide. Yeah. Yeah. And I know you're working on getting another one of those workshops
Mhm.
happening. We're going to, for anyone listening, we're going to link all of Bebuo's information, everything she's up to in the world in the show notes. I know in particular, the Executive Playground, one of the pulls to the travel side of it is one to get leaders out of their element because we're tied to our phones, our desks are oh, I can't leave, it'll all crumble, which is a sign that you should go on one of these retreats. If you feel like everything will crumble when you're not there, you need to go, not just for you but for the company you work for. But also I know in conversations we've had, Bebuo, one of the things that's the first thing to go off the table for leaders. It can be, head of household. Like I hope you all are hearing like a wide definition here of leaders. The first thing to go is our well-being.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Leader sacrifice. You're already used to sacrificing, right? You've been sacrificing all your life. You sacrifice sleep so you can get the A's. You sacrifice time. You sacrifice relationships. You
health,
sacrifice action. You sacrifice support. You sacrifice a lot of people, to be quite honest, sacrifice regular things like creating a successful relationship or time with family or nurturing kids on their pursuit. I won't say pursuit to happiness because is it a pursuit to happiness? For some people, it is. And I also want to acknowledge that too. Like for some people, success is happiness, and that gets to be okay. Like, so I hope you hear me saying that that gets to be okay. This is not a dig at your path forward. It's just an opportunity to be curious of what else you get to do along the ride. Because if we get to like retirement or 75 or it's your last day on the planet and you look back and if all you did was work, are you satisfied? If you didn't create time to go anywhere, if you didn't create time to have the family you sought, if you don't create anything else but the container that you have at work,
yeah,
is it enough?
yeah,
And if so, amazing. And if not, take a look.
yeah. Take a look. Call Bebuo. She'll help you take a look. And yeah, did you create the time for all that? But also, do you have the energy for all of that? Like, do you work and work and work to the point where you retire, but you're so run down that now you have little energy to retire to anything? So there's lots of currency here: time, energy, finances. So just some encouragement to take an audit of all of it for our listeners here. Bebuo, thanks so much for sharing. You're just such a wealth of wisdom and the way in which you, from personal experience, and I hope listeners got this too today, the way in which you say things or ask questions that get us to challenge some longstanding beliefs does not land like a dig or like a call out, but more like just there's a lot of grace and compassion, and it's like a hug while you're asking some hard questions, which is a really cool skill. And like it's magic. It's really magic, and it's what makes. I mean, personal development work is it's the unknown, so it can be scary. So to be able to have, for me, to have someone in my corner who helps me to it makes it less scary. It makes it less scary. Like it's more, and I'm like questioning myself, like, oh, is this external authority? Is this an external sense of safety? But it's just partnership. I know you've got my back, and more so in reflecting to me what I already have, the skills I have, the gifts, the mindset, all of it, the work.
So thank you for bringing that up because so for those of you who like to share your thoughts and have a thought partner, consider that the difference is, are you seeking a yes or no from that person? Like, are they going to validate where you are, or are they going to ask it back to you again? Because that comes into it's like, well, don't ask me.
Yeah. We've had moments like that for sure in our calls where you're like, who do you want me to be for you right now? Like, why are you saying that to me? And that's always a fun reflection. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm looking for you to co-sign what I said I want to do. So, which Bebuo doesn't. She stands for me to keep that authority within. So Bebuo, thanks so much for being here. In the spirit of the podcast, May We Know Them, highlight strong women and their stories. Do you have any accounts you like to follow, books that you've read, just people in your space that we should get to know to support our own continual growth in that 3-step process you talked about?
Absolutely. The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. If you haven't read it, read it. Talks about your upper limiting and the beliefs that you associate with those upper limits. Give some examples. He even has a website with videos on it for you to watch those too. And these are real examples. Another one is The Go Giver, because I believe in giving, and then the universe gives you something back.
Karma.
Yeah. Get out there, read The Go Giver. Thank us later. Another one, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is a good one too. That is a good one.
That's an old school. That's an old school one, but like tried and true lessons in that for sure. For sure.
The one that always sticks out to me is understanding others. Like focusing on understanding others.
Yeah.
Instead of
being understood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that one ties in good with developing that internal authority. Looking to be understood, it's like another notch, another checkbox, another versus actually genuinely understanding others, which you have more capacity to do when you're solid.
Exactly. It's another way to test yourself.
Yeah.
If you can't be with others and hold space, it means you're fighting for something over here.
Yeah. Oh, so many thought-provoking nuggets, tangents today. I'm excited to see in the comments what really stands out to people. So as you're listening, please drop in the comments, what really resonated with you, what challenged you, what things you're going to take forward as you're just pondering life, no biggie. Very nonchalantly, but yeah, let's keep this conversation going. This is the kind of stuff I know I'm hungry for, these kind of waking up conversations that get people to come back to themselves. It's all like just one giant pursuit of homecoming to me, coming back home. So yeah, anything else you want to say in closing, Bebuo?
Don't forget to play. And when I say don't forget to play, I mean sometimes you have to go outside and play with some play with some sand, play with some mud, because there's a lot of value in creative space that you get to have by simply playing. Get on a bicycle, go laugh, do some laughter yoga, Google it if you don't know what it is. If you have kids, go build some sand castles with them and knock them down and laugh with them. Just go be silly. Go be great. Have a good time. Thank me later, because it will give you so much access, so much room for so much more.
Oh, taking that to heart over here too. Bebuo, thank you so much. For all of you who have listened to this episode, thank you for being here. Let's keep the conversation going. Please stay tuned for another episode.